I want to start with some of the charts that you've put together in the paper as they're interesting. And the first one we show is that the polls and how some of the candidates are polling right now, to which these aren't always the most accurate, are they, Kevin, the poll?
No, there's a lot of issues with polling, including the response rate, either through the phone or internet-based polls. But the response rate now is about 0.4%. So the reliability, I think, is highly questionable.
You also bring in the paper, though, what the betting sites are predicting.
Yes,
and just tell us again why you think these are more reliable.
I think betting sites are more reliable. People choose to go on the site. They do put their own money down. And there's a number of studies showing that they are better predictors or indicators for a host of different market events, including for elections.
And so what this one is showing right now is Trump is in the lead. Biden is closer.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming this would be Robert Kennedy or RFK.
Yeah, so now it's clearly focused on him, but previously there were other candidates. And one thing that I find interesting from these charts is normally we get a lot of back and forth, but most of these charts we've been creating since November, and they've been reasonably consistent that Trump has a small lead over Biden, and we've got a long ways to go still, 6 months before the election, and some big events coming up the next 4 months. And we'll have to see whether the consistency we've seen in the last 4 months with a small lead for Trump, whether that holds or not.
Bill, any thoughts on that?
No, I think Kevin has said it well.
Yeah.
I think one of the big issues that all the candidates are going to have to address as you work into the fall is a factual case that we have to roll over 1/3 of our existing debt this year and finance a growing deficit. The government needs to find buyers for $10 trillion of bonds this year, and this scale will increase every year. The government's spending more servicing the debt than on national defense, and that's probably going to have to change. When you look at how this all sums up, the fiscal problem just gets worse. The IMF estimates that America's need to cut spending or raise taxes by 40% of GDP simply to stabilize the debt load in 1929. There's a real fiscal issue in the United States.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, I think, let's talk a bit about actually how that might get addressed in the upcoming, but we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk a bit about trade, and you actually say in your report that we're all economic nationalists now.
Yeah.
So maybe just give us a context on that.
Yeah, so when Bill and I first started writing about sort of reinventing globalization in 2016, the reaction to it was actually pretty hostile. There is this real change going on. And in 2016, we had Trump coming up with a different view of trade. We had Lighthizer, who's his trade rep, presenting a view in terms of tariffs and how we view China that was very different than the consensus. But the world's caught up to them now, and it's bipartisan. And we saw last week the tariff increases announced by Biden. Trump and Lighthizer have been talking about balanced trade, much higher tariffs if Trump wins in November. So I think going forward, this is one of the big risks for markets. We could see markedly higher tariffs, sanctions, quotas, and ultimately for certain countries, a call for balanced trade. This is a very different way of thinking about the world than we've had previously. But it looks to me like it's coming, and it's probably bipartisan. Yeah.
That's interesting. I was just going to touch on the tariff piece. I know that you say in the paper, and we've heard that Trump is pushing for baseline tariffs of 10% right across the board, and President Biden has shown his willingness to put tariffs on Chinese goods to protect U.S. workers. We've seen it with EVs and chips and those types of things. So that's happening on both sides. Just to which magnitude, I guess?
Yes. Yeah. I think regardless of who wins, we're going to be seeing more protectionist measures, but the slope will be higher under a Trump administration. And people should take Trump and Lighthizer on these issues both literally and seriously.
Taxes. Bill, you were talking about the dire fiscal circumstances we're in. Taxes, of course, are a way for governments to actually raise the money to deal with some of that. How's that looking for both candidates?
I don't think people are going to touch that during the campaign. Trump has pretty much said his tax cuts that occurred under his administration he wants to make permanent. And maybe they can do that. But behind all this is very inflationary. When you onshore versus offshoring, your cost base is going up. And you've got a number of issues surrounding government spending on healthcare services, aging services needs. I don't know how you escape more inflation.
Yeah.
I don't see how. And so when you get into the stock market, for example, that starts to impact valuations.
Energy, something that you highlight in the paper as well, that you're going to see elevated oil and gas production regardless of who comes in.
Yeah, so sort of the secret under the Biden administration is that U.S. production of fossil fuels, both oil and natural gas, record highs,
Right.
#1 producer in the world of both of those. It's something the Democrat administration doesn't want to talk about very much, but that will certainly continue under Trump if he wins in November, with a lot more permitting, new land available, pipeline approvals, and so forth. People also worry that some of the green measures that have been put in place by the Biden administration would be revoked or gutted by Trump. That probably is unlikely, given that 70% of this money goes to red districts. So in the same sense that Biden doesn't like to talk about all the fossil fuel production, I think the Republicans won't talk about the green production. They'll leave it in place. And much like Obamacare, nobody's going to come out and criticize Obamacare because it's been so beneficial, similar with the IRA measures going to green production. So energy under either administration looks interesting, but particularly under a Trump administration.